your old pal said, son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
Please sing along with this version of We Gather Together, revised and expanded by the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Northern Chautauqua in Fredonia, New York.
We gather together in happy thanksgiving, from east and from west and from south and from north. In sweet jubilation we praise all of creation, and these the wondrous bounties the earth has brought forth. We sing now our praises for graces around us, for air that we breathe, and for rain from above, for music and laughter and peace forever after, for food and shouting laughter, for warmth and for love. We're thankful for dear friends, for fathers and mothers, for brothers and sisters and babies that grow, for aunts and for uncles and cousins by the dozens, for food fresh from the ovens, our blessings to flow. We're thankful for being alive on this planet, for rain and for sun shining down with warm rays, for fields and green forests, and for the gifts before us. We join in this our chorus of love and sweet praise.
We are now called together, called by bell and bird, called by mountain and plain, called by the beat of our hearts to join again the living tradition we share, to answer again the call of justice and love. Today, with the bell ringing from St. Gudula Cathedral in Brussels and the orioles singing around the eastern U.S., let us remember the second of our tradition's sources, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains, New York, formerly of the Lenape Nation. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister.
I'm Tracy Brenneman, Director of Religious Education and Lifespan Faith Development, and your worship associate this morning.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which affirms four truths.
It's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and you don't have to go it alone.
The sun is 10 weeks into summer. The daylight today is almost 2 hours shorter than it was back on June 20th. And the sturgeon moon is waning gibbous.
A special welcome to our visitors. If you are a first-time visitor, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll find a link to our order of service on our webpage at cuucwp.org. There you will also find other resources to help keep us connected during this time and a donate button. For July and August, our Share the Plate funds go to Furniture Share House, who collect new and gently used furniture to distribute free of charge to Westchester families in need. We're able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, the plate share, and the minister's discretionary fund.
And now, Board Chair Joe Majak has some news and then will lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board of this congregation, I welcome you. September 4th. Please write it down. Part of the placekeeping RE curriculum this October will involve having each student use a piece of parachute cord as long as their arm span, a nail, and a sidewalk chalk to draw a mandala on the lower parking lot that reveals to them the sacred geometry inherent in the proportion of their own bodies. What's a mandala? A mandala generally represents a spiritual journey starting from outside to the inner core through layers. The challenge is we need volunteers who can help instruct our students. So on September 4th, during our first Saturday placekeeping event, after we have used wheelbarrow brigades to spread wood chips on our path network, and after lunch and refreshments, Vice Wilson will demonstrate how simple this all is to anyone who wants to help our congregation learn this work and be prepared to instruct our youth in October. Please pass the word. Bring your families. Folks of all ages can do this work. Vice will bring chalk, parachute cord, some big nails, and the requisite hammer. Dress like you may be making art on a blacktop sacred field, once thought to be a parking lot. Dress like you may be out in the sun. Bring food and what to drink and something to sit on. Spirit Grove and the place where a stream flows through a wall will be nearby. Nice and shady and cool for respite and socializing. September 4th. Don't lose that piece of paper. And now it's time to light the chalice. On the 10th Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the second source of the living tradition we share, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Please join with me in the chalice lighting from Reinhold Niebuhr. Nothing worth doing is complete in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness.
Here's something for you. Joseph Priestley believed in phlogiston his whole life, apparently. Let me set the stage. As human ideas and concepts change and evolve, we redefine what words mean. Take the case of planet. The word originally meant wandering star. When we learned that those objects we'd been calling planets weren't stars at all, we might have said, so there's no such thing as a wandering star, no such thing as a planet. Instead, we redefined the word to fit our new understanding of those objects in the sky to which we'd been referring. Or take the case of atom. The word originally meant indivisible. When we learned that they were divisible after all, we might have said, those things we've been calling atoms aren't atoms. Instead, we redefined atom to fit our new understanding of those objects to which we'd been referring. This process fascinates me because many of us reach a point in our religious life where we make that sort of choice, either conclude that there's no such thing as something, God or freedom, or we redefine the word and adjust our conception of it. Usually in the history of evolving human beliefs, we take the route of redefining terms. It is rare that we opt to say something simply doesn't exist. For instance, even though the humor's theory of health and temperament is thoroughly discredited, we don't say there's no such thing as blood, phlegm, or bile. We just reconceptualized the role of these bodily fluids. But for phlogiston, science collectively took the unusual step of declaring it just plain doesn't exist. And we'll have to pick up from there in our next thrilling episode. Loud. And now, the spoken invocation, and then sing along with the Unitarian Universalists of All Souls, the sung invocation. Happiness by Jane Kenyon. There's just no accounting for happiness, or the way it turns up like a prodigal who comes back to the dust at your feet, having squandered a fortune far away. And how can you not forgive? You make a feast in honor of what was lost, and take from its place the finest garment which you saved for an occasion you could not imagine, and you weep night and day to know that you were not abandoned, that happiness saved its most extreme form for you alone. No, happiness is the uncle you never knew about, who flies a single-engine plane onto the grassy landing strip, hitchhikes into town, and inquires at every door until he finds you asleep mid-afternoon, as you so often are during the unmerciful hours of your despair. It comes to the monk in his cell. It comes to the woman sweeping the street with a birch broom, to the child whose mother has passed out from drink. It comes to the lover, to the dog chewing a sock, to the pusher, to the basket maker, and to the clerk stacking cans of carrots in the night. It even comes to the boulder in the perpetual shade of pine barrens, to rain falling on the open sea, to the wine glass weary of holding wine. Please sing along now with the All Souls Virtual Choir, our sung invocation, Spirit of Life, in Spanish, then English.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all members and visitors who would like to please affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. Now here's our congregation singing Gaudeamus Hodie.
Gaudeamus Hodie, Gaudeamus Hodie, Gaudeamus Hodie. Gaudeamus Hodie, Gaudeamus Hodie, Gaudeamus Hodie. Hallelujah, Gaudeamus Hodie, Hallelujah, Gaudeamus Hodie, Hallelujah, Gaudeamus Hodie.
In prayer, we take a moment to solemnly remind ourselves of our purposes, our gratitude, that they may inform and affirm our actions and our being. Will you then pray with me? Dear Spirit of life, we live and breathe and have our being in a magnificent universe. Especially we give thanks for those preserving our world and for those learning more about our universe. People of science exploring outer space, including putting rovers on Mars, learning more about the wonder of this vast creation. The reintroduction of shark bay bandicoots to the wild in Australia, where they had been locally extinct for over 100 years. Trials in strip mining alternatives in Borneo that could drastically reduce carbon footprints by drawing minerals out of sap from certain species of plants. Spirit of life, may we remain faithful to you and grow more faithful. We raise up prayers for wholeness and renewal. Our thoughts, hearts, and prayers are with the refugees from and the displaced people in Afghanistan who seek safety after Taliban seized back control of the country. The people of Madagascar suffering famine-like conditions driven by 4 years without rain. All those around the world affected by COVID-19, which has killed 4.5 million people since the pandemic began, and new cases per day are again over 650,000. Deaths per day, again at almost 10,000. Our prayers and our gratitude are with international organizations providing relief for the people of Haiti after a destructive earthquake and storm. Our gratitude for the work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee in Haiti and around the world, and for all the people who have contributed to that effort. Our gratitude for all people who, in ways great and small, are working for a sustainable planet. For example, the people of Tuscany, Italy, who moved to stop illegal trawling and preserve biodiversity in their region. The people of Scotland, where a Recycle Your Electricals campaign repairs, recycles, or ethically scraps small electricals, getting items into the hands of those who need them, while keeping rare minerals in the ground. Our hopes today are with the thousands who rallied yesterday in DC for voting rights. May their voices be heard. And our thoughts with those in the path of Hurricane Ida as it approaches landfall. We ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, to heal what is broken. And so, amen. And now for all that has been said, and for all that we carry unspoken in our hearts, we'll have a silent meditation, then a musical meditation, and then sing along with the sung response.
This week, we have an eco-spiritual practice sponsored by Community UU's Environmental Practices Social Justice Team. The practice is to explore the issue we could call industrial civilization and everyone else, adapted from Rebecca James Hecking. If the whole world lived a middle-class American lifestyle, it would take more than 4 Earths to provide the resources. This lifestyle can only be maintained if others around the world do not share it and instead live in dire poverty. None of this is the fault of us as individuals, yet we do have a responsibility to live with as much integrity and mindfulness as possible in our personal lifestyle choices. We need to say enough to our leaders and to the unrealistic notion that our standard of living should constantly rise. We need to say enough to our individual lifestyle choices. Practices that go with this reflection include 1. A mindful fast. 2. Adjust your home altar this month to reflect a consciousness of the less privileged. 3. In your journal, brainstorm ideas about possible lifestyle changes you could make. For a group activity, host a hunger banquet. Do an internet search for Oxfam Hunger Banquet for all the instructions. For more on the spiritual practice of exploring industrial civilization and everyone else, see the post at cucmatters.org.
Our next hymn is number 1060, As We Sing of Hope and Joy. Please sing along with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica, New York.
As we sing of hope and joy today, some lonely anguish and despair, how can we lift our voices in this way, while some have pain and misery to spare? If a crumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. Peals from a noisy gong will never do. In every breath compassion must belong. Let this song our greatest hopes contain, laughter of a well-fed child, its tune grooves over every heartbeat, its refrain, its harmony from peaceful cities hewn. Sing of joy while hammering each nail, sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail. May every Alleluia bear a seed.
Quick survey. Just one question, and I'm not even going to collect your answers, so it's just for your reference. Jot down your answer on a scrap piece of paper, or just say it to yourself, but remember your answer. On a scale of 0 to 10, overall, how satisfied are you with your life these days? 0 means not at all satisfied, and 10 means extremely satisfied. On that 0 to 10 scale, overall, how satisfied are you with your life these days? Jot down or remember your answer. Supposing your answer isn't 10, what would it take for you to move up 1 point on that scale? Some of us maybe would say something like winning the lottery, which the data shows has only a temporary effect, and within 6 months, people tend to be back where they were. Most mature adults don't make happiness a goal. I hear parents say, I want my children to be happy, but I don't hear those parents say they want happiness for themselves. It's possible that they really do want happiness, but they don't say so because it seems, I don't know, crass to say it. But I don't think that's it. There's a reason it seems crass, and most mature adults, I think, not only don't want to seem crass, but actually aren't so crass. We want meaning. We want connection. We want purpose and challenges that take us right to the edge of frustration, but only rarely carry us very far beyond that edge. We want to make meaningful contributions to communities that we're a part of. We want fulfilling relationships within which we can be our authentic selves. We want respect and to love and be loved. We think about these things and we more or less consciously attend to them. We give our attention to meaning and purpose, connection and relationship, and figure we can let happiness take care of itself. In fact, if you offered me a surefire way to be happy without meaning, purpose, authenticity, and relationships, I would say, I have no idea what that would be. Some drug-induced state is the only thing I can imagine. But in any case, I'm not interested. I think most of us wouldn't be interested. We are and prefer to be oriented toward meaning, belonging, authenticity. Those are things that make for a satisfied, happy life. And even if they don't, we'd rather have those things without happiness than have happiness without those things. So if happiness isn't the main thing we want for ourselves, if we regard happiness as merely a pleasant byproduct of what's really important, then why do we so commonly say we just want our children to be happy? Why do we say we want for them what we don't say we want for ourselves? It might be that happy is just shorter and easier to say than listing off authenticity and integrity, meaning and purpose, respect, love, and belonging. And that's probably part of it. But I think there's something else at work. Namely, happiness as a concept, as an idea, as a value, works best when it's pointed at others. For myself, I think about meaning, relationships, integrity, and let happiness take care of itself. For others, for my children, my spouse, my congregation, I think about their happiness and let them take care of the other stuff. In other words, I think about helping create the conditions within which I give them the space and the autonomy to construct their own versions of a fulfilling life. The idea of happiness works best when it's pointed at others. And this, strangely enough, brings me to the well-being program at the London School of Economics' Center for Economic Performance. If parents think about their children's happiness, and grown children think about their elderly parents' happiness, and friends and lovers think about the happiness of their friends and lovers, then public policy can think about the happiness of the populace. As citizens, legal or otherwise, we have a role to play in the shaping of policies, a responsibility to build communities of flourishing for everyone. You and I can be part of a shift away from emphasizing gross domestic product toward emphasizing actual life satisfaction of all the people. What factors would contribute to that shift? It's explored in a book, The Origins of Happiness, The Science of Well-Being Over the Life course, written by 5 scholars who are all members of the well-being program of the Center for Economic Performance of the London School of Economics. The authors are policy wonks, numbers crunchers, quantification heads, data nerds. It turns out they do have some helpful findings about what public policy should focus on to improve the happiness of the populace. First, they need a way to measure happiness. And what they use is the question I asked at the beginning. Overall,
How satisfied are you with your life these days? That's their operational definition of happiness. And there's a numeric answer, 0 to 10. And they then set about looking for factors that correlated with higher or lower scores. If you are suspicious of a numbers crunching approach to happiness, you're not wrong. At the end of the day, the researchers had to say that all the variables they could think of and measure combined accounted for only 15% of the variation in people's happiness. The other 85% comes from genes, from features of temperament and character that public policy can't do much to influence. Still, 15% can make a big difference. So, what are those factors? There are 10. 1, income. It helps a little bit, not very much. Within most advanced countries, income differences explain only 1% of the variation in happiness across people. Doubling your income raises your happiness on average by 0.12 points on a scale of 0 to 10. Not very much. If you're at 7, say, then doubling your income will get you to 7.12 on average. Further, a huge part of the way income affects life satisfaction is how your income compares to your peers. Specifically, doubling your income lowers your peers' life satisfaction by a combined 0.13 points. So it's basically a wash. As the authors say, increases in income cannot increase the happiness of a society. 2, unemployment. This one is a stronger factor. Unemployment reduces the happiness of each unemployed person by about 0.7 points on average. And it also creates fear and unease among people who are at work because the unemployment of one person reduces the aggregate happiness of the rest of the community. 3, family life. Being partnered rather than single raises happiness by 0.6 points. Losing a partner by separation or death reduces happiness by a roughly equal amount. As with being employed, people need to be needed and to be in meaningful relationships. 4, mental health. Depression or anxiety disorder reduces happiness by 0.7 points on average. 5, education. 1 extra year of education has a small direct effect on happiness of 0.03 points and larger indirect effects via income and mental health. 6, child development. A child's emotional health is a strong predictor of a satisfying adult life. A child's academic performance is a much weaker predictor. 7, parenting. The best predictor of a child's emotional development is the mother's mental health. Conflict between parents is also damaging to emotional development, as is child poverty. 8, schools. Differences between schools account for a substantial part of the variation in child's emotional health. 9, loneliness in old age. Whether or not they have a partner, people with an extra standard deviation of loneliness have a life satisfaction that is lower by 0.5 points. 10, social norms. Happiness is hugely affected by the ethos of a society, which affects everyone in it. Happiness is higher in societies where people trust each other, as measured by the survey item, in general, do you think most people can be trusted? Or alternatively, that you can't be too careful in dealing with people. Happiness is higher in societies of generous people, as measured by the question, have you donated to a charity in the present month? Happiness is higher when there's social support, when more people say yes to, if you were in trouble, do you have relatives or friends you can count on to help you whenever you need them? And freedom is a factor, indicating satisfaction with your freedom to choose what to do with your life correlates with overall life satisfaction. Citizens of totalitarian states are less happy. That's the gist of what the quantification approach reveals. After the interlude, we'll look at how policymakers would use these findings. Adam? How would policymakers use the findings brought out by the researchers of the well-being program of the Center for Economic Performance of the London School of Economics? The researchers' hope is that policymakers from the largest government department to the smallest NGO, non-governmental organization, will in due course adopt the happiness of the people as their overarching policy objective, rather than focusing on economic measures that are an imperfect proxy for well-being. The money is always limited, so it should be spent on those policies that produce the most happiness years per dollar spent. They'd look for policies that reduce unemployment, encourage partnering up, reduce depression and anxiety, particularly for mothers of preschool and school-aged children, improve schools, reduce loneliness among older folk, and somehow shore up public trust, generosity, networks of support while protecting freedom. And policymakers would be more focused on those at the bottom. A policy that produced a 1-point average gain for those at 4 or less on the 10-point life satisfaction scale would be much more valuable than one that produced a 1-point average gain for those who were already at 7 or more. The researchers conclude, we have to move beyond GDP, and we can. We need a new role for the state, not wealth creation, but well-being creation. In past years, the state successively took on poverty, unemployment, education, and physical health. Not necessarily successfully, but successively. But equally important now are domestic violence, alcoholism, depression and anxiety conditions, alienated youth, exam mania, and much else. These should become center stage. One example, from 1994 to 1998, the Department of Housing and Urban Development had a demonstration project called Moving to Opportunity. The program combined tenant-based rental assistance with housing counseling to help very low-income families move from poverty-stricken urban areas to low-poverty neighborhoods. In 5 cities, Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, 4,600 families enrolled and were randomly assigned. Participants experienced mental health improvement. And after 15 years, happiness had increased 0.2 standard deviations, which corresponds to roughly 0.4 points of life satisfaction on the 0 to 10 scale. The net cost per family was $3,700. That's a pretty good return on the dollar. The program did not address root causes of poverty, and it didn't address the racism that led to Black urban ghettos, but it was a boost in well-being for the families that participated. And it illustrates how cost-effectiveness analysis for raising life satisfaction can work. Policymakers, of course, aren't just governments. NGOs, non-governmental organizations also set policies. Corporations' policies affect life satisfaction. And there are some signs that corporations may be thinking about that rather than merely thinking about increasing the wealth of their stockholders. This week, I read an article in a business magazine, Fast Company, that made the point that although people think being paid well is the most important driver of being happy at work, actually, our belonging at work is the most important contributor to happiness by far. The article went on to talk about how businesses can build belonging. And they weren't just talking about building belonging among their workers or even among their customers. They were talking about the business's role in contributing to general community belonging, hosting events that bring people together. The article concludes, while many companies have seen their role in the world as arm's length and transactional, selling to and communicating at people, enlightened companies create real value by inspiring and connecting people around opportunities to contribute. This is not a stretch from what companies do at their best.
but it is a different way of existing in the world than we've seen from many multinational companies maximizing short-term shareholder value, which have systematically transferred and centralized opportunities to a few regional hubs and socioeconomic groups. After a year of social isolation, sickness, and tension, companies of all sizes must get back to what they should be in business to do: create opportunities for people to do, to contribute, to succeed, not just to buy. End quote. If that is a real trend, it's one that we, as a people of faith oriented to making the world a better place for everyone, can get behind. And finally, I want to circle back to what we can do for ourselves. I said that we give attention to meaning and purpose, connection and relationship, and figure we can let happiness take care of itself. And while that's generally true, the fact is we don't always give so much intentional, reflective attention to those things as we might. We can get caught up in our work in ways that lose sight of what we know is really more important for us. The pandemic has actually helped many people pay more attention to a life of greater well-being and flourishing. The New Yorker a couple weeks ago reported in early June, the Labor Department released a report that revealed a record 4 million Americans had quit their jobs in April alone, part of a phenomenon that news outlets are calling the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is complicated. It affects different groups of workers in many different ways, and its explanations are myriad. Those resigning are generally well-educated workers who are leaving their jobs not because the pandemic created obstacles to their employment, but at least in part because it nudged them to rethink the role of work in their lives altogether. Many are now embracing career downsizing, voluntarily reducing their work hours to emphasize other aspects of life. End quote. So we're talking about people who have the privilege to be able to make such choices, a privilege that many don't have. And yet their choices tell us something about what kind of world we would want for everyone. What kind of work-life balance conduces to human flourishing for any human? There's a society-level question for all of us to think about. What policies in the public or private sector would help ensure meaningful work for everyone without sucking anyone into too much work? And there's also a you question on which to reflect and to which to bring greater intentionality. It's a human need to be making a meaningful contribution to some community you're a part of. Take a careful look at how well that need is met for you. For some of us, the need is to find an outlet through which to contribute. For others of us, maybe the problem is that meaningfulness of the contribution isn't enough to justify the hours and energy we're putting in. And for still others, the issue is that the work, no matter how meaningfully contributing, is also so consuming that other human needs for relaxation and fun and depth of relationship and just being are neglected. To return to the question we began with, overall, how satisfied are you with your life these days? Take a look at how you answered that question when we began. What does that answer mean to you? The origins of happiness for ourselves and for those around us require some paying attention to. May it be so. Amen.
I invite you now to sing along with singers and pianist of Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Durham, North Carolina, our hymn number 368, Now Let Us Sing. If you sing low, sing with Lelena on the right-hand side, and if you sing high, sing with Jocelyn on your left.
Now let us sing to the power of the faith. Sing. Now let us sing to the power of the faith. Lift up your voice, let us pray. Let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing to the power of the faith. Now let us sing to the power of the faith. Lift up your voice, let us pray. Sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Lift up your voice, let us pray. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing to the power of the joy. Now let us sing to the power of the joy. Lift up your voice, let us pray. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within.
The words, be safe, be well. Now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. The prophet's challenge to confront harm, to respond with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. This now our resolve.
Words of Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are.
In spite of their failings, we believe.
Because of, and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream.
Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment,
To love mightily.
to bow to the mystery.
Go in peace.
If you